Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 7th through 13th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 5 movies, I watched 2 shows, and I listened to 2 books. Hopefully the audio is fine for this video because I just use the audio on my camera, I don't have a mic, and we're in nature. I'm in the garden section of the Frogmore pub, which is my favorite backyard pub in the entire world. Which means I'm finally back in Canada. I've been here for a week, it's been very nice. By here, I mean mostly home, but I got here yesterday. The first book that I finished this week is very appropriate for this outdoor setting, and that's Cubs and Campfires. This one is a book about this journalist who is just trying to start out his career, and mainstream newspapers won't really let him write the dating content that he's been writing in college because it's just too explicit for their newspapers. 1, because it's talking about sex and sexuality, and 2, because he's queer. So he takes on an assignment where he's supposed to spend the entire summer not dating. Nothing at all. And by dating, they mean literally any sexual activity, no first kisses, no anything like that. So he decides to take a job as a fire watch ranger in the middle of the forest, all by himself, which would make this really easy, right? Except for literally the only other person he sees is this other really hot guy who is also gay, and I think you know where it goes from there. This ended up being a lot more steamy than I thought it would be, given the premise, even before maybe he fails his assignment. The other book I read with my eyeballs is Miss Major Speaks. This is a non-fiction book. It's split up into a few different sections, but it's mostly written as a discussion between Miss Major, who is a queer icon, and her assistant who wrote the book. There's a lengthy introduction at the beginning to kind of give some context about her life. She is still living, or at least was at the time of publication, which I think was last year, maybe the year before. And unfortunately, it's not super often we have first-hand accounts of our queer elders just telling us about their lives, and obviously she's lived a life very different than my own, so I highly recommend this. Hello, Lottie. Are you gonna come up here? No, you're gonna ignore me? This cat woke me up by laying on my chest earlier, so here's a photo of that. On to the movies I watched this week. 4 out of 5 of them were on the plane home, and I picked all of them based on, hey, this cast looks good, I'll watch whatever this is. The first one was Heretic. With this one, the poster is just Hugh Grant looking evil AF, and I went, yep, whatever this is, I'm watching it. And it turns out this is about 2 Mormon missionaries, and they're making regular stops, and they're going to this one last stop about this guy who is interested in the church. And they go into his house, and his wife's in the back making a blueberry pie, and they start talking to him about the church, and he starts giving them some pushback and just talking about theology, but there's something a little bit off about this situation, and they eventually realize this isn't a normal visit. I very much enjoyed this. Are you now the star of the show? Yeah, you are. The next movie I watched is The Housemaid, which I didn't connect it with the fact that there is a book of that title. It is based on that book, and I was eventually going to get around to that book, and now I probably still will because I really enjoyed the movie, and I want to see how they differ. I also went into this one because I knew that Amanda Seyfried was in it, and I have most recently rewatched her in Veronica Mars, so in my mind, she was quite young, so when the main character popped up, my brain went, why isn't that Amanda's character? And then I went, because she's clearly going to be playing the mom in this situation because she's older now, because she's no longer Lily Kane age. This is about this woman who just needs this job. You realize that she doesn't really have the qualifications she says she has when she puts forward for this housemaid position. And you also come to realize that she really needs to get a job because she has been released from prison, and if she doesn't get a job, she goes back for the rest of her sentence. Everything seems kind of fine when she gets this housemaid job. It seems like it's going to be a pretty cushy gig and she gets to live in and all of these things. But then the mistress of the house starts flip-flopping on her and blaming her for things that clearly weren't her fault. I'm not going to say too much more than that because there is a major twist in this that I did not see coming, and I was so happy when it happened. And all I can say is all the people that I've heard raving about the book, I can understand why if it's anything like its adaptation. Finally, for plain movies, I watched You're Cordially Invited. This one has Will Ferrell having a daughter who's about to get married, and Reese Witherspoon having a sister who's about to get married, and because of a massive booking error, they end up getting married at the same place at the same time, which shouldn't happen because this island is only big enough for one wedding at a time. These two people, being the ones behind the wedding, start fighting over different things. Shenanigans absolutely ensue. I really enjoyed this movie. This was a lot of fun, so chaotic, and it's really funny because yesterday I actually arrived back in the valley because I was going to a wedding, and fortunately it was nothing like the weddings in this movie. It was so chill. Kathy from editing here. I got distracted by Lottie, my feline companion, and forgot to talk about the fourth movie I watched on the plane home, which was The Roses. Again, I chose this one because of the stellar cast, and not only is it just the two lead characters, but the rest of the cast is also full of people that you'll be like, oh my goodness, this person is in this movie. This is about a couple who meet serendipitously, and within moments they are super into each other, to the point where she's about to move to America and he just moves with her, and we flash forward to 10 years later. They've got a house, they've got kids, everything's going really well. He's an architect and his business is really thriving, and he's about to open this brand new building that's going to be quite the landmark. And they have enough money that he can buy her this small property so she can be a chef a few times a week, which is something she absolutely loves doing. However, around this point, things kind of shift in their relationship. I won't tell you how, and it just becomes an all-out war between these two people, to the point where the book that this is based on is called The War of the Roses. And oh my goodness, their banter is amazing. The scenes in this are absolutely fantastic, and I won't tell you how it ends, but if you've seen this movie, oh my goodness, that ending. The final movie that I watched this week is something I watched with my roommate when we got home, and that's Spy. Again, I would have picked this just based on the cast of Melissa McCarthy and Jude Law, and also Jason Statham shows up and he plays a ridiculous character, and also Peter Serafinovich, I think is how you say his name, shows up, and his character is also very funny. This is about a woman who works as kind of the person that's in the ear of a classic spy, and they work really well together as a team, but something changes and she ends up having to go into the field for the first time, and obviously, shenanigans ensue. Classic spy film with classic spy ridiculousness. It's fun. As for the shows I watched this week, we watched the last episode of the 21st season of Jetlag, Taskmaster. All I can say about this is if one character hadn't complained about the scoring system where everybody got the same points for a certain task, that character would have been tied for first place. So maybe just don't complain about things sometimes, and you might win shows. Obviously, I really enjoyed this, and the next cast has been announced, and I'm so excited to see Richard Ayoade doing these tasks. We also watched the first episode of the 18th season of Jetlag, which I think is called Stateside Scramble. So they're doing this thing where they have to collect different states around the United States. It's a game that's explained in the episode, so I won't go into it here. Also, it's not up on YouTube. It'll be up on Wednesday because it's up on Nebula a week ahead, so I've watched it ahead of time. And a very interesting, we'll say, location makes a debut on the show, and I'm not going to say anything further than that, just to say I was delighted by the way they introduced it. As for the books I listened to this week, the first one was Yesteryear. This one is about a mommy influencer who lives on a farm, living her best idyllic life with lots of help behind the camera, which they just never mention because that would make things look different now, wouldn't it? She grew up very religious. She actually even went to Harvard, and that's how she met her husband, and then she started kind of trying to manipulate things behind the scenes so that she would have the best life possible. This trad life existence is juxtaposed between her life in the present, doing all of these things, being an influencer, etc., and her suddenly finding herself back in 1855 and what that looks like as someone who lives on a farm. I didn't know exactly how this was going to play out. I tried to go into this not knowing anything about what was going to happen and what people's theories were, because I'd seen lots of mixed opinions kind of just in star ratings, and then I would scroll right by because I didn't want to know what was going to happen. And I'm really glad I didn't know people's theories going into this about exactly how this situation unfolds and why it happened in the first place. Because this story is absolutely wild, and this was written with so much nuance, because on the surface, this is a character that I would not get along with. I don't really like her, but also there are certain things that happen that I completely understand why they happen that way, and what she was going for, and whether or not she was successful, I'll let you find out. This was definitely a very interesting book. And finally for this week, I read Blessed Water, which is the follow-up to Scorched Grace. This one is about Sister Holiday. She is a nun who hasn't taken her vows yet, and now in this book she's also the apprentice to a private detective, because she helped solve a crime in the first book, and her and a character from the first book decide that they are going to open a detective agency together. And what do you know, they go on their very first case. They're supposed to meet up with a client, but instead they find a dead body, and it's Easter weekend, and they need to solve this because she actually knows this dead person. This is a setup I find really interesting. The writing is really lush and descriptive of the area. The characters are also very complex, and you get kind of red herrings between characters as well, which I really enjoy. Somebody from her past shows up in this one and then is also maybe possibly a suspect. I really enjoyed this, and the audiobooks are narrated by Mara Wilson, which will always make me like something even more. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!